am outstanding, my friend. Welcome to the television broadcast.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is the month to be talking about it. And as we talked about before the show, Robert, I guess down in Mexico they have at least a couple weeks toward the end of the month. We celebrate the singular day, maybe October 31st, but in Mexico, I think didn't you say they have kind of like a 2 week run up to that thing, or what goes on with that?
Yeah, they have about 2 weeks where they really go all out and prepare. And for me, with my business, I own an import business and I import mostly arts and crafts from Mexico, as I explained on the other show that you had me on. And Day of the Dead is a big season for me, and people start to order from me, I'd say about the beginning of September. And a lot of the stock that I have, I carry it year round because I always sell this stuff year round. But the really good stuff is being made right now down in Mexico. Usually the last 2 weeks of October, they start making a ton of stuff to put in the marketplaces so that the people who are celebrating the holiday down there can get all their goodies ready for the celebrations.
And so yeah, they do celebrate. You know, I was watching. There's a James Bond movie where I think the beginning of the show is like he's down in Mexico and it's the Day of the Dead, and he himself puts on a skeleton suit, and then his girlfriend, or well, I don't know, does it have girlfriends? I don't know who they are. his lady of the night, I guess. She had
Paramore.
she had her Day of the Dead looking outfit on. But I tell you what, man, some of those things are freaky. Those big old giant skulls, when they start going down, and you got these guys with these big sticks or whatever manipulating them to indicate, to make them look like they're alive. I mean, sometimes I'm thinking those things are doing that by themselves, and they're not being controlled by anybody.
Well, you know what? It's interesting that you mentioned the James Bond movie because they had a parade for the opening scene of that movie in Mexico City, and they had never done that before. And a lot of people were going down to Mexico City the following year expecting to see the parade. And they had been asking municipal authorities in Mexico City, when is the parade going to be? When's the parade going to be? They had gotten thousands and thousands of inquiries from people from around the world. And so the city fathers in Mexico City said, well, we got to do something about this. If people are going to be coming expecting to see the parade that they saw in the movie, we better give it to them. So this is an example of art imitating life, I guess, life imitating art, like it's all backwards and messed up. Because that holiday in the bigger cities, it's not as celebrated as much as it is in the countryside. And the more indigenous the community, the more likely they are to celebrate that holiday. And it's mostly restricted to central and southern Mexico. In the north, they don't really celebrate it that much, but it is getting wider and wider adaptation throughout the country. And then, of course, on this side of the border, everyone's trying to get involved with it too.
Well, I know we're talking about Mexico, but interesting, Mexico City, Florida got wiped out, I think. I don't even think the town exists now, does it?
I have no idea. You know what? I've been so busy packing orders and stuff for this season that I haven't been paying attention to, what Hillary is saying or,
Oh, I'll
the
fill you in.
hurricane or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on that I've been getting snippets of, but I've been in my own little world here. In fact, I'm coming to you from my little office warehouse in San Diego. I haven't gone home yet.
Well, I'll fill you in on current politics.
Uh-oh.
I have a strange way of making connections to whatever the topic is to current politics. I don't know. I just something I do, man. It's a knack. It's a God given talent, man. But we're talking about mysteries and magic type things and unexplained mysteries in Mexico. I really enjoyed having you on last time, Robert, and as you saw in the Facebook, for those of you that don't follow me on Facebook, I put the post of this upcoming show, and I put that I did a quote from Donald Trump where he said, "Here I go with the political tie-in." He said, "Well, Mexico has not been sending us their best, and by the list of monsters that you talk about, I'm pretty sure that chupacabras and the Mothman and skeletons and nymphs and all kind of things coming up through there is not the best of Mexico, or maybe they are. What do you think?
Well, and you know what? Some of these creatures, I don't think a wall can stop them from coming across the border either. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Mexico sure does have its share of strange creatures and unexplained things that go on in the night, and lots of legends and things like that. It's just amazing. It's never ending. I do a show a week, a podcast, and it's also a slideshow on my
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel by the same name, Mexico Unexplained. And it seems like I could probably do a show a day if I didn't have to work. I could do a show a day and go on for years and years and years. There's so much material. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I've listened to some of those podcasts. They're short and succinct, and they tell a story each time. I mean, how do you come up with those stories? You just pick a topic and go get the facts on it, or the history, or how's that come? How they come about?
Well, I explained a little bit in the last show, but for other people who haven't seen that, I'll go into it briefly again. Because I've owned this business for almost 2 decades now, importing from Mexico and other Latin American countries. And also I worked in Mexico City for a while, and I was also a student before that, going back almost 30 years now, 1989. I was a student in Morelia, Michoacan. In all my experiences down there, my buying trips and everything for my current business and all the experience before, I've come across all these weird things that I don't hear about here
Mm-hmm.
in the United States, and some of it's not in English. And to give you an example, let's do a little show and tell here.
All right.
I was subscribing to this magazine. It's called Muy Interesante.
Whoa.
And see, there's a
Sounds kind of
skull
sexy,
on the
man.
cover. Very interesting. That's what it's called, Muy Interesante. And that was the October 2018 edition. But that magazine is really what got me started on this path, because I would buy that every time that I would go down to Mexico, and I was on a plane with a Muy Interesante magazine, reading through it, and I was reading about crop circles, and I thought, wow, I haven't heard this in the United States. Then there were some other stories, and I thought, well, maybe this just exists in the Spanish language press of Mexico. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, well, maybe I should be telling these stories on this side of the border. And then also, with you were asking about research, people send me stories. People tell me about legends. People say, when I was a little boy in Zacatecas, my grandma said she saw this or whatever. And then I research it. And because I speak and read Spanish fluently,
Mm-hmm.
I have access to all this material that a lot of people don't have
Mm-hmm.
access to.
Mm-hmm. Robert, you've flown to Mexico many times, correct?
Yes, yeah, man, I can't even count how many times.
Well, let me put this to you. Put this to you. A few years ago, I don't know whether it was a prophet or an evangelist or some supernatural or some spiritual type of person was flying over Indianapolis. This is where this show comes from, and it said as he looked down on the city, a revelation came to him or a voice spoke to him. I forgot how he said it, but he was impressed that what was going on at the center of the city, there's a monument there. And he was saying that it was real to him that the city of Indianapolis, which nobody really knows what the name Indianapolis, Indiana come from. Sometimes they say it's the historically, maybe because there were a lot of Indian tribes here. So they called it Indiana, Indian with A. But he said it was real to him that it really means in Diana Polis, which means in Diana, the goddess, Polis meaning city, and the revelation was that the goddess Diana was receiving, or people was sacrificing babies to the goddess Diana, and that is the spirit that's over this city, and I thought that was very interesting, so I'm asking you, at any of your overflights, have you ever, as you're looking down or whatever, has anything ever impressed you? Like when you go over a certain city or certain area, did you feel something looking down, or was it just a plane ride and nothing ever happened like that?
just a plane ride, hoping that I would have a safe landing. And some of those airports can be kind of sketchy. One time I was actually leaving an airport and all the power went out.
Hmm.
And there was no backup generator, and it was an airport out of the Yucatan.
Okay.
So, but no, that's kind of
Well, I'll
off
tell you
topic.
what.
But
Now that I've opened your world to that possibility, and really, we're talking about possibilities.
right. So,
So
you know what? I'll keep my eyes open. I haven't really given it much thought, but nothing's really come to me or anything. But
yeah, I saw.
um,
I saw a. There's a guy named Timothy Alberino. He's with Gen 6 Productions, and Gen 6 has to do with a group that are investigating things, and their archaeology investigations have taken them to Mexico several times, and in a search for giants and various things, and you know, and he just started Twitter, and immediately a troll came and said, "Hey, scientifically, what you say can't possibly exist," uh, and I wrote in there said, well, unless you have the knowledge of all science at one time, you can't possibly make that statement because all that is known, all that is out there is not known. All that can be known
that's right.
isn't known. It's just the way it is. And I'm sure you, even to this day, are continue with discoveries of things that may not have been known but now are known. So nobody can make that claim. And we'll be talking tonight about various things where somebody says, well, that can't be, and you know, and this and that. Well, unless they've been endowed with every bit of knowledge that has ever existed, nobody can really make that statement. But let's go right to a question for you, Robert, from Doug White says, have you seen any thunderbirds, pterodactyls?
I have not seen anything like that, but there are stories about them in Mexico, but they usually take the shape of an owl. And we talked a little bit about that the last episode, but
Mm-hmm.
to recap, there's this gigantic creature that's about 6 or 7 feet tall. They call it the Latrusa,
Mm-hmm.
and it's supposedly a shape-shifting witch that in the middle of the night turns into this gigantic owl, and it'll scratch at your door. And people have seen it in the air, and they've also seen it in the Rio Grande Valley of
Mm-hmm.
Texas. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one creature that I believe might actually have some basis in fact.
Mm-hmm.
Other things can be described as mass hysteria,
Mm-hmm.
trends that have been talked about on the media, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
this story is a little bit too weird for me, and I get so many hits on my website. Now that I've installed a counter,
Mm-hmm.
I see that I'm getting 4,000 hits about the Latrusa per day.
Wow.
Per day, 4,000 people are coming to my website just looking for that, for information on that creature and how to ward it off or whatever. For
Mm-hmm.
every creature and every legendary creature in Mexico, there's a remedy. So, if we want to talk about creatures, we can also talk about, how to repel them too.
Well, we're going to have to, and I'll tell you why, because here goes our political tie-in there, Robert. You said witches scratching at the door. Of course, a group of witches was scratching at the Supreme Court door trying to get to Kavanaugh, man. And I'll tell you what, if you've seen, you probably ain't seen the video, but it's nasty, man. There's this skags, these, go ahead, you look like you want to say something? I'm going
Well,
with,
you know what? I have seen some of those videos, and the last show that you and I did, we talked about demonic possession,
mm-hmm.
and it almost seems like these people, there's something that has taken over them, and I have to say that with a bit of seriousness, because when these people are stopped and asked, "Why are you here?" they can't give an answer. So if you're saying things and doing things without an explanation, it almost seems like you've been taken over by something. And I've seen
Wow.
that on social media too. I've seen friends of mine or whatever go
Mm-hmm.
off, fly off the handle at me. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, hey, it's
Mm-hmm.
me. Remember, you used to come in my store. You were my friend. I went to your kid's birthday. Why are you calling me? Da, 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 da? You know, what's going on here? It's almost like it's almost like some sort of possession. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. And like I said, I haven't been paying attention that much, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm still connected to social media and stuff, and I do like wind down the day by looking at Facebook or Twitter or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Ugh, politics.
Yeah.
What can you say?
So there you go. And you nailed it exactly. It's unreasoned, unbridled hatred that they don't even know where it's coming from. I use the word, I'm going with the word evil. But yeah, man, I mean, these skanks was scratching at the door. It looked like, we're talking about, are you?
That's terrible, Scan. You're bad.
I know it, man. That's why this is the edge. There's only one cosmic cowboy out there, and you're on the show. So you know you gotta be ready for it. But anyway, man, like he's on, scratching at the door. And by the way, go ahead.
No,
More.
I was gonna say, it's funny. I was just thinking about all this. In 2016, I was actually kind of almost pulled into the Hillary Clinton campaign. And you would be interested to know the story. I don't know if we have time or if it's the
Oh yeah, go
right
ahead.
place or whatever.
That's right.
Show and tell. I'll turn around
Let's do it.
and we'll see if you can see this.
Okay.
You see what this is?
Yeah. It's a pinata.
Okay. That's right.
A
Yes.
Donald Trump pinata.
Exactly.
What's
You
that
know
stuff
what?
for?
I thought I came up with that idea, but like the airplane,
Uh-huh.
you hear that the Wright brothers invented the airplane,
Yeah.
but the airplane was invented basically at the same time in New Zealand, Brazil, Europe.
Mhm.
I don't know. There's doubt on when it was when it was invented and by whom. It happened spontaneously in different places. Same with this piñata. I thought I came up with the idea because I thought, what would be a good outlet for hatred for people? And then so I came up with the idea of piñata, and other people were doing it too. But no one was doing it to the degree that I was, because
Aha.
I've been around for a long time and I have scale. So I was putting these on Amazon and eBay.
All right.
And there were other people too, but they were offering one, two. I had a stock of like 200. I brought in a trailer, a 28-foot trailer full of these things, and they sold out in 3 months. But because I was like the big boy selling these online, I got a call from a super PAC that was behind Hillary Clinton. And this was right before the Democratic convention. And the guy called me and he said, "We want to order from you, and we want to have order thousands of these from you. Can you do it?" I said, "You bet I can. I can get this done." And so his first call with me was very arrogant, and he expected me to be starstruck and everything. And I was like, "No, I'm in business, so this has to work for me, from a business standpoint." So I said to him, "Okay, let's hash out a deal." He wanted me to carry the inventory. I won't give you all the boring details and stuff, but according to the deal that they wanted to give me, I was going to take the brunt of the risk. I would have to store all of them, whatever.
Mhm.
Fine. If they wanted me to make all the piñatas and ship them to them to take care of them, I could do that. But I wasn't going to be an order taker and store them and have to buy the boxes for them or whatever. And they wanted to use these piñatas at the Democratic National Convention. That's what he was saying.
Wow.
And so we went back and forth for about a week, and I kept saying no, and I didn't care who they were. Like I said, I wasn't being starstruck. I don't care who you are. The arrogance that he had with that first phone call, by the last phone call, he was sniveling. And I was wondering if maybe he went to her and maybe she had the idea and he went to her and had to tell her no. And I wouldn't want to be in that position of actually telling her no.
Wow.
So it didn't happen. It didn't happen because I'm not in the business to supply the stars, or I'm not in the business to make sales. I'm in the business to make money, and the deal wasn't a good deal. So, they need
Wow.
some lessons in capitalism, I guess. I don't know. Whatever.
Well, I was going to say, man. I mean, why not sell them to these people, make some money, and then use it for a cause against them? I mean, that's what I would do. But we were getting into that because we're talking about some magic and mysteries, and to end this thread here, we're talking about there's a group of witches that have got together that are trying to put a spell on Justice Kavanaugh. And you just said earlier that you may have some sort of remedy, but what would you recommend that Judge Kavanaugh get or do? Proven technique, proven Mexican, because you got to figure there's a lot of things against people. curses and stuff that people pronounce against other people in Mexico. So what do you recommend?
Well, a typical Mexican who is into the occult or who is exposed to the occult or the demonic or whatever, they will tell you, go see a priest.
Mm-hmm.
The most powerful weapon against that sort of thing is
Mm-hmm.
your good old-fashioned religion. So Kavanaugh is Catholic, so I'd say go get a priest or an exorcist. Well, not an exorcist. He doesn't have to go that far. But yeah, just lean on your old-fashioned religion, and that should help you. That's what they would tell you down in Mexico, I'm sure.
Okay, well, let's make sure we get a good priest because, you know, there's some variance there, man. There's something going on in there. You know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah,
hey,
it is a weird time. It is a weird time in politics. I'm old enough to remember Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. They were like polar opposites, but they were friends. You know, they
yeah.
were. They could get together at the end and have a handshake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't see that anymore. It's like, I'm going to slash your tires. I have in my neighborhood, I'm in California, I'm in the belly of the beast. There is a woman who has a house on my block, just 4 or 5 houses down from me, and I call it the I Hate Trump house.
Oh,
She has pieces of burned American flags. She has
what the?
signs in the lawn, you know, and she has effigies of Trump, traitor, all these bad words, whatever. And it's like, you know, I don't know what's going on. I really don't know what's going on. I just wish it would just stop. I don't know what else to say,
Stop.
man.
Please stop.
But I don't. I'm in my, like I said, I'm in my own little colorful world here most of the day, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of monsters out there, but now you've wrote a lot about those in your book. I mean, you talk about part 1, myths and legends, then religious curiosities, otherworldly phenomena. You know, I was listening to one of your podcasts and I heard something I've never heard before. Was it psychic archaeology?
Yeah, psychic archaeology. It's basically, well, it's pretty self-descriptive. I think it's
How's that
people
work?
using people using psychic means, whatever that may take. You know, seance, anything from seances to remote viewing, whatever you include into psychic phenomena to conduct archaeological research. So yeah, that's I guess a fringe field, psychic archaeology.
Well, does it work? Has it worked?
Well, you know, that is a really good question. Has it worked? Some would say it has. It depends on your interpretation of what's found, what's being discovered, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it last time about the chupacabra, though. That
Yeah.
is a real thing, isn't it?
Well, I don't think so. I think that was more of a fad, and it got
Mm-hmm.
started in Puerto Rico, and it got picked up by Christina, that television show that goes throughout Latin America. She talked about it. Then right after she talked about it, it seemed like the chupacabra relocated, took a vacation, and went to Mexico.
Okay.
And then it lasted, the whole chupacabra phenomenon lasted for about 10 or 15 years, and you don't hear about it anymore. And a lot of the chupacabra sightings can be dismissed as dogs with mange, gigantic raccoons,
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There are other, you know, and it's a modern day monster. It
Mm-hmm.
first appeared in 1995 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There are other monsters in Mexico that go back 4,000, 5,000 years or more, whatever, you
And
know. But that's a relatively new one, like the black-eyed kids. That's another thing. They arrived in Mexico around 2005, I think. But before that, you never heard anything about them.
well, don't Mexicans, a lot of them have black eyes to begin with?
No, not completely black, like the, what do you call it? The iris and the iris and not pupil. The whites of the eyes are black.
Mm-hmm.
In the black-eyed kids, in Spanish they call them los becs, B-E-K, beck, black-eyed kid. They take the English
Mm-hmm.
abbreviation and then they Hispanicize it, los becs. The eyes are completely black. So the whites, the pupils, and the irises,
Mm-hmm.
the parts of the eye. They're all black. So
It's all
yeah.
coming from Mexico, man. I think I was listening to one of your podcasts. You were talking about there. I guess there's some that are trying to make the case that maybe perhaps the Mayans or the Aztecs went around the world. They brought their technology around the world rather than it coming over here. Where do you fall on that?
Well, that was an interesting assertion, and it happened in a time when we really didn't know much about archaeology. It happened in the mid 1800s. There were some, archaeology was a wealthy person's science. If you didn't have to work, if you had a trust fund, an inheritance, you could take off and do your little digs. A lot of Egyptologists were Lord this and Lord that, or they
Mm-hmm.
were backed by people like that. And the same with Mexico and other parts of the Americas. There were some people who had their wealth, and they went off into the jungle and started digging or whatever, and they came up with their own theories. And there was one theory that said, no, and civilization did not begin in the old world and came to the new. It began in the new world
Mm-hmm.
and went to the old world.
Mm-hmm.
And people were theorizing that the ancient Maya, that was basically the mother civilization of Egypt. And they were linking different things. And it was interesting because if you look at some of the things that they were saying, with the knowledge that they had then, they could make a really good case for that. But a lot of this, for the two people that I'm thinking of in the 1860s and the mid 1900s, the group of people, the theosophists, Madame Blavatsky and that group, there were some people who belonged to that group in New York who believed that in this Americas as the origin of civilization spreading throughout the world. Those people engaged in some of that psychic archaeology. They had seances, they channeled, beings and stuff. And where we get the idea of the lost continent of Mu, that's when that came out around that same time. That the information was being channeled. And there are some architectural similarities between ancient Egypt and the Maya area, doorways and arches and things like that. I don't know if it's just coincidence, but people were making the connection and saying that even Freemasonry, which supposedly had its origins in Egypt, actually originated in the Yucatan in ancient Mexico. Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right. One of our viewers asked this question. Have you ever studied the megalithic sites in Mexico?
Megalithic or what?
Well, that's what he says. The megalithic sites.
Megalithic.
Yeah.
Okay, megalithic. That means big stone sites. So that opens the door to the big sites. I actually was a tour guide for 2 summers down in Teotihuacan, so I know that site really well, and I've been to that pyramid. I've been to that site many times, so I'm very familiar with the larger sites and a lot of the smaller sites too. There are quite a few smaller, more interesting sites that are overlooked.
And then what about the Catalina Island? Have you been there?
Catalina Island. That's off the coast of California.
Yeah.
No, I haven't been to the Channel Islands off the coast of California. Okay. Although I can see one from the beach at La Jolla.
I can see that island from the beach. And I think I asked this question last time, and I guess we'll see if you're still clear. But some say that spirits attach to objects, and if an object comes from a place where there's black white magic going on, voodoo, who knows what, that they will attach to the item. Now, I thought I saw some figurines in your background, and it looks like there may be one there now. I can't really tell. Is that some kind of do these things? Yeah, I mean, when you're there alone at night, Robert, do they turn around and look at you? That's my question. Let's be honest.
I have not. You know what? I wish I lived in a world like that sometimes. It's kind of boring packing all this stuff a lot of the times, but I haven't really had much experience with that sort of stuff. when I had a retail store, I owned a retail store for 10 years. I mentioned that last time. Sometimes people would come in and tell me that certain objects gave off really weird feelings, good or bad.
Uh-huh.
I remember one time I had a Native American healer. He was To'ono O'odham from southern Arizona. And he came into the store and he went up to the cash register and he had a pot and he said, "The pot speaks to me." And he waved his hand just accidentally over a basket of charms that I had on the counter of the cash register. And he said, "Whoa." And I said, "What?" And he said, "These are warm. These are giving off an energy." He said, "What are these little things? These are powerful." And I said, "Yeah, they're milagros. People consider them to be very powerful. They're healing charms." He had no idea. His hand just happened to be over it or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I've had some people say things like that. I remember one time I one week I had things falling off the wall in my store.
Uh-huh.
That was kind of weird. But I had a really pragmatic customer come in and he was like, "What's wrong with you? You're saying that these things are happening because of paranormal reasons or whatever. Snap out of it. You just need to hang things better."
Well, I tell you,
but I don't know. These objects, I'm not there when they're being made.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if somebody is like taking this and putting something
wow.
putting something in this or what. I have no idea what's going on. But
Yeah. Well,
I'm open to it. And like we said in the last show, we don't have to explain everything, do we? Why can't we just sit back and wonder sometimes and just let it go? And in America especially, we have to have everything spelled out and written up and described and examined and explained thoroughly. And I think
well, I'll
I'm
tell you what,
that.
if you got one of the Mexican dolls you put in a box and later you see it's out of the box, you know it's happening. You know it's on, man. Hey, somebody asked a just generic question. Said, where can they buy your stuff that you have?
Well, I've had my own website now for almost 20 years. It's called sueñosimports.com. And then you can use that name, Sueños Imports, on eBay. And I have, I think, something like 2,000 different items on eBay. As far as the skeletons and stuff go, I think I have like about 500 different items now in stock because it's really popular. But yeah, I was one of the first. I think I might have been the first to sell this sort of stuff online. And in 1999, people told me, "You're not going to sell this sort of stuff because people need to hold it and look at it and everything and examine it because it's a piece of art." And I said, "No, people in Australia, people in Indiana, they're not going to be able to buy this stuff locally." I said, "People are going to be doing everything online." So I started this. I don't know if I could have started it right now doing this in 2018, but because I've been doing this for so long, there are a lot of links out there. If you just put my name into a search engine, if you put in Latin American crafts, Mexican crafts, all the stuff will come up. So all the links, are there.
Well, I tell you what, Robert, if I get on there and I buy me a skull and I turn it over and it says made in China, I ain't buying nothing else.
Well, it's funny that you say that because here is a skull made in Mexico.
Yeah.
And this is a skull from the dollar store. Now, this I sell for $8.99.
Okay.
This sells in the dollar store for 99 cents. So you know what's happening?
What's that?
People in the United States are going to the dollar store, and Mexican Americans who want to celebrate the holiday and they want to do what's traditional and set up an altar in their home, a table, and where they put mementos of the people who have died, their favorite foods, pictures, flowers, usually marigolds, and then the happy skeletons, because it's a joyful time. A lot of them, and I've seen this online, they're bragging that they're going to the dollar store and they're saying, "Hey, look at my altar. Look at what I got for $20. So for $20, they buy 20 items, whereas this is $8.99, which used to be a deal. I mean, I was selling everything for cheap. But what's happening, and I got kicked off of a Facebook group because I mentioned this. I said, if you buy more of this,
Yeah.
then this will stop being produced. And
Hmm.
so if you want to support the culture, and if you say, hey, it's all about the culture, then this is going to go away if you keep buying this and if it's all about price.
Hmm.
So and that's what I've been seeing. Usually Day of the Dead for me, for my business, is my biggest season.
Hmm.
And this year, last year, and the year before, I've seen a decline in sales, and it's because of this sort of stuff.
Who
But
needs
you
that?
won't.
I don't want that crap from the dollar store. If I'm
But
gonna
a
if,
lot
I'm
of
gonna, if I'm
people
gonna
do,
have
and
me a
like I
dead
said,
man's skull altar, I'm gonna.
I got kicked off of a Facebook group for mentioning that because the woman didn't want to hear it.
Hmm.
I was speaking the truth.
Hmm.
You know, as a dealer, I know where this is made. I've seen it's
Hmm.
this is made
Yeah.
in somebody's backyard. Their family's making this.
Hmm.
If you don't buy this, then and you buy this, and that's your choice to be supporting Chinese sweatshop or
Oh,
these people, their
look. If you're gonna have
hey, it's my culture. Well, why aren't you supporting it?
if you're gonna have a skull altar, do it right. Get genuine Mexican stuff.
That's what but yeah, dude, they they kicked me off. I was well, okay, yeah,
Okay.
whatever.
Okay. Well, listen, we're right at the top of the hour. We take a 5 minute break. We'll take you out of the picture momentarily, but tell folks how to get your book, Mexico Unexplained. Explain.
It's the website mexicounexplained.com, and it'll take you to the podcast, and there's a tab on the top that says buy the book. You can get an autograph copy from me. You can also just it links to Amazon. You can just get one from there too.
Okay. All right. Just hang around there. You don't have to. You can walk around, take a break, whatever you want. We'll take you out of the picture. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right, everybody, you're watching and/or listening to the Edge Television broadcast. On our newsmaker line tonight is Robert Bitto, and we're talking about Mexico, unexplained mysteries and miracles.
Well,
We're going to talk about monsters in the second hour. Stay tuned. We'll be right back to the show. Meanwhile, let's go back to our Skype newsmaker line and welcome back Robert Bitto. Robert, welcome back.
hi there. Hey, during the break, I found something in my warehouse from 2 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. Is it alive?
Hillary
Oh,
and
Hillary. Wow.
Hillary and Trump.
Oh,
See,
man. Who's going to win that battle?
I had a whole bunch of these made, and I have like 3 left or something, and they're on my website. People can get them there. But
Oh man,
yeah,
people
I
got to
had
get that
forgotten
Hillary. I might go for a Hillary pinata, man.
Well, you know what? After when I had the Donald Trump ones, people asked me about Hillary,
Hmm.
but then the time that it was going to take for me to get those done, it was going to be too far into the campaign, and I pretty much thought that she was going to lose.
Hmm.
Sorry. And so I thought it wouldn't have been a very wise business decision to make those pinatas because I might have been stuck with a lot of stock.
Well, the
I
only
knew
way
that, and then the hatred wasn't the same.
I
You
know
know, it
it.
was a special brand of
You
hatred.
need that. Well, the only way I get a Hillary pinata if you can make one with a colostomy bag attached to it, so I could poke it. Can you make me one of them?
Oh boy.
I mean, I want them tailor made. You know what I'm saying? I tell you, hey, let's get to some questions. This is from Kevin in Massachusetts. He says, "Have you ever heard of any underground bases in Mexico or tunnels that lead to the underworld?"
Yeah, and that whole idea of an underworld that goes back thousands and thousands of years. We briefly touched on that in the last show, but a lot of the mythology, a lot of the religious beliefs of the indigenous in Mexico, the pre-Spanish beliefs included a belief in an underworld. That there is a whole other realm that
Hmm.
exists underground. I think the question speaks more to right about now. Like, is there a civilization under the earth or tunnels, secret tunnels, or
Hmm.
whatever? Well, I'd say people believe all of that to be true. Some people believe that the Maya really didn't go anywhere but underground,
Hmm.
that they went underground. There's a special underground Maya.
Hmm.
Then people also think in this place called the Zone of Silence that there are underground bases that NASA and the U.S. military have. in this kind of Bermuda Triangle area.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, underground stuff. Yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
plenty of stuff
Mm-hmm.
on that.
I think we may have also discussed this. When the Spaniards got there, they seen the Aztecs ripping hearts out of people, and I saw one of the pictures on your website of it must have been a picture of an ancient drawing of somebody ripping a heart out, and I don't know if they're going to eat it or so. But all the demonic, and some would consider that demonic activity. That seemed like when it comes to demonic activity and ritualistic sites of murder, that whatever evil is there is still there. It doesn't really go. It doesn't age like we do, and civilizations come and go. But I mean, you take the Poltergeist movie for instance. The house, the location. And there had to be mass evil, incantations and curses and spells. I mean, all kind of calling weird gods and things. But isn't it possible though that those are localized and that the evil is still there?
Yeah, it's possible, and a lot of these legends that I talk about stem from that idea. Um, One thing that I'd like to mention along these lines is that some of the biggest sites where sacrifices existed are now the sites of massive churches, cathedrals, and basilicas.
Mm-hmm.
Take, for example, the Templo Mayor, the grand temple complex in the center of Mexico City. The Metropolitan Cathedral of Mexico City is on the spot where they had most of the sacrifices in the Aztec Empire. Thousands of people were sacrificed there, and that's where the basilica is now. So there's been hundreds of years of Christian worship on that very site. And the same goes throughout the country. We have sites like that. But there are beliefs that there are localized demonic entities and spirits, depending on where you go.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is some serious business. There's evidence that I don't know. I don't know if it's on the dark web or not of Hillary and her girlfriend Huma doing either eating kids or something to that effect. Doing ritualistic sacrifices for power. But but externally, outside of that, there's somebody going around talking about spirit cooking, and big name players get into that now.
Yeah, and you know what? That made mainstream news.
Yeah.
So if anybody's talking about fake news or whatever, that whole spirit cooking thing made it on all the major networks. So if people are saying that, oh no, weird things don't go on, well then they need to talk to NBC, they need to talk to CNN, and any of these people who, any of these major outlets that talked about stuff like this. But I guess there's a creepy underside to humanity, and it's throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the average person doesn't know about it, and I'm sure the average person doesn't want to know about it.
Well, they cannot know about it, but it's going on, man. It sounds to me like in Mexico they might be a little bit more open about it, at least. I mean, we talk
Well,
about
they were in ancient times, that's for sure.
Yeah, and let me ask: is a basilica is that a Catholic place or what is that?
Yeah, that is a cathedral that has either been visited by a pope, or has a connection to a saint, usually. So, like the basilica to the Virgin of Guadalupe, the Virgin Mary appeared on that site, and then popes have been there.
Mm-hmm.
So, like there's a basilica in Phoenix.
Uh-huh.
Because a pope had visited that place and gave it the special blessing. That's just a more important cathedral or church.
Did they have a special kids' day when he showed up? I'm sorry, man.
No, I wasn't there.
Okay, I'm sorry. No, man, kids' day. Lots of fun for the kids. A lot of backdoor things going on. All right, hey, we got. You mentioned the Mother Mary and I think one on your website there's a picture of a Mother Mary, Virgin Mary, something crying. There's a lot of crying going on with the Virgin Mary, man. She can be in a potato chip crying or on a reflection in a window. She's showing up everywhere she shows up. There's some what's going on with that? Why is it more prevalent in Mexico?
I have a whole section on religious curiosities, and that picture that you're showing now is the Weeping Virgin of Monterrey. And in Monterrey, Mexico, there's an old lady, an old Mexican lady that has a picture of a certain Virgin Mary. I can't remember which one it is. I think our Virgin, I'm not going to guess. I forgot the exact, because the Virgin Mary has different manifestations,
Hmm.
different functions also. But
Uh-huh.
this one, she is holding the baby Jesus, and it's just a picture. It's a piece of paper on cardboard in a frame,
Hmm.
and water comes out of the eye. And it's not a trick with it's been examined. It's not a trick with like a pipe going through or whatever and the water dripping out.
Hmm.
It's
Right.
nothing like that. It's been examined. Nobody can explain what it is. But there are lots of things like that throughout Mexico. Like there was a show I did last year around Christmas time because the thing that happened around Christmas a few years ago. The crown of thorns on the Jesus, the corpus in this cathedral, it started to flower. Just started to sprout flowers, blooms. And it was a few weeks before Christmas, and people were like, "What's going on?" And so they took the crown of thorns off of the head of Christ and had it examined. And the thorns were made out of a bush that's in the desert, a thorny cactus type plant
Hmm.
that, when activated by water, it'll start sprouting. But people were saying there was no way that water was getting up there. Everything was dry in that cathedral. It just started sprouting flowers. And then they put it under glass, and it still kept blooming for a couple of weeks.
Hmm.
So, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that it immediately then becomes uh, an object of devotion. People will make a pilgrimage to go see this
Hmm.
because they believe it's a miracle. It's
Hmm.
part of the culture to be predisposed to believing in things like this.
Hmm. Well, I think some for some people the life they live is so horrible they'd like to check out and maybe go into another parallel type of universe, man. So
Well, you know what? We have a lot of that here too. And
yeah,
we check out with drugs,
yeah.
prescription or otherwise,
Hmm.
video games, all of those vices that we have,
Hmm.
of the modern world.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, people people are looking for something that's bigger and better than their humdrum lives a lot
Hmm.
of times, I think.
Everybody's looking for answers, and the
Hey,
Bible's the
maybe
only
that's
one
one
that's
of the
got them.
reasons why I started this podcast. Maybe my life was a little bit too humdrum and too ordinary.
Well, you can't have a show without talking about Bigfoot. Now,
Yep.
where they at?
Well, there are two types of Bigfoot creatures. There's a skinny one that's in the jungles. It's called the Sisamite,
Oh, I
and
like
that's
that.
also through Central America. And he's kind of a skinny, shy Bigfoot type creature. First described by a Canadian acrobat. I think he was a circus performer. It's kind of a weird story, but he
Wow.
went down to Central America and also the jungle states of Mexico, I think Campeche and Chiapas, and then he was tracking the creature.
Hmm.
And it's a skinny, uh, taller, skinny hominid, supposedly. And it goes back to the Maya times.
Hmm.
Sisamite, I believe that's actually an Aztec word. I think it means something to do with a demon. But the Maya believed that these creatures were part of the jungle, like a deer or something like that. But there's another Bigfoot that's more like our North American Bigfoot that you would find in the Pacific Northwest, and it's called the Cuatlacas. And that's found in the mountainous regions of central Mexico. And like I mentioned on your show before, a lot of people, when they think of Mexico, they think of either beaches or the deserts of Speedy Gonzales. But central Mexico is very temperate. It has the perfect climate. It's like here in San Diego. It's always 72 degrees, throughout the year. But once you get up into the mountains and you get higher, you have three mountains in Mexico that have perpetual snowfields. They have glaciers.
Hmm.
So just below the glaciers, you have pine forests, really thick pine forests like you would find in Washington State or even the northern part of my state, California.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the habitat of that Bigfoot called the Quatlacus.
Mm-hmm.
And he's an angry Bigfoot. He's not like the shy Sisamite in the jungles. So
He angry, huh?
yeah, he's angry. He doesn't like people
Hey,
going into
hey,
his
hey.
territory. And there's a lot of remote forest in central Mexico that hasn't really been explored.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't think of Mexico like that, but that's the way it is.
No, we're Facebook friends. Have you looked at my my Bigfoot hunting video?
I don't think I've seen that. You know,
Yeah.
like I said, I've been really
Okay.
busy with all this stuff. I'll have to check it out.
take a break and go look at my Bigfoot. I mean, my wife and I, we were on it, man. There was one out there, top of this hill in Arkansas, and it was coming after us, and we had to make an escape. So that's all I can
What?
do.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was your own personal, wow,
Yeah.
your own
Well, yeah,
personal
put it up on
encounter.
Facebook, man. We tried to live stream it, but when you're running for your life, you know, it's kind of difficult. Here's a question. Speaking of Arkansas, Arkansas Bob says, have you done any discoveries about giants there?
Yeah, you know what? I did a show on that, and the show has actually been pretty popular. There's a lot of controversy on that because there are some historical accounts of giants, like the when the Spanish were taking over the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, which later became Mexico City. There was a story of one of the warriors who was a giant that was throwing boulders, you know, rocks the size of watermelons at the
Wow.
Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he actually held them off. He held off a whole group of soldiers for like 2 or 3 days. There's story that can be explained by just genetic gigantism, you know.
Yeah.
But as far as races of giants, that's been
Like Andre the Giant, that type of thing.
yeah, that's yeah, gigantism. Like
Yeah.
one here, one there, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, just anomalies. But as far as
Yeah.
like a race of giants, we've heard that the Smithsonian in the United States has suppressed evidence of giants,
course
you
they
know,
have,
done
bastards.
stuff with the bones. Well, in Mexico, they have a similar institution. It's called the National Institute of Anthropology and History. And that institute has branches in every state. So they control the archaeology in Mexico, I think, even to a greater degree than the Smithsonian does.
Wow.
And so any bones of giants or whatever have disappeared, or they're not, you know, nobody knows where they are, where they've been stored.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in colonial Spanish accounts, there were a lot of accounts of people discovering giant bones. And of course, there are legends from the ancient civilizations that there were giants. In fact, the Aztecs believed that their ancestors, some of the people who built the pyramids, the older pyramids, the pyramids that were there before they arrived there, the people who were there before were actually like 10 feet tall or taller.
Mm-hmm.
There were a race of giant people.
Mm-hmm. Are there any? This is from our YouTube chat, because we have, as you know, we got two different chats going on YouTube and the one on the website from PGLF 1982. Any flood myths in pre-Spanish Mexico?
You know, I haven't heard of any. That's a good question. Not that they don't exist, but I mean, I've gone through the mythology, and, you know, we're told on a lot of these, you know, alternative sites and stuff, or, you know, we've even grown up with the flood myth is around the whole world, you know, it's in every culture. But, you know, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of any stories of great floods.
Wow.
But you know, that's something that I can look into some more, but I haven't come across any of that.
Okay. Have you, Giorgio Tertulio, as you know, he wears that little alien pin. Have you found any of them down there?
No, but I can have them made for you.
Man, I tell you
Sure.
what, you're just a basket. Anything I want, man. Like I said, I want a Hillary pinata with a colostomy bag attached to it, and a shoe.
We can do that for you.
And then a shoe that comes off. I want it. I also want it to be. You heard of fainting goats? I want a fainting pinata. Can you do that too as well?
You know what? When I had these made, I had the artist. This is terrible. I had the artist make them with the blue glasses that she had on September 11th. You know, some
For
people were saying
Alzheimer's.
that those were anti-seizure
Yeah.
glasses. I
Wow.
had the
Too
artist
too
paint
funny.
those on these,
That
and I posted one of them on Twitter,
you're bad,
and
man. I
I
can't believe
posted
you.
one of them on Twitter, and it sold within 10 minutes.
I can't believe you. Good job though. I love that. Blue glasses, man. That's a
I'm
for those who don't know,
terrible.
that's almost like an inside joke, but it shouldn't be. I mean, man,
Well,
wow.
you do remember that, right? When she
Yeah,
was in
of course I remember
September
that.
11th
Yeah.
at the,
Yeah.
before she had that whole stiff thing,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
was wearing those blue glasses, and
Yeah.
yeah, I asked them to paint it. They did it. I got it. It was, and
Wow.
boom.
Man,
Yeah.
I can't believe you. Yeah, because when I heard that, I went and researched that about the blue glasses, and there's a video out there of a guy he's having an attack, and then he puts on the glasses, he gets up and walks. It's like, wow, that blues, it's proven. Of course, she'd have to have them, as you know. But here's another question. It says, do you know about the Aztec giants that the Spanish conquistadors encountered? Did they encounter giants?
Well, like I was saying, they did encounter the ones here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like that one warrior that was throwing the watermelon-sized
Mm-hmm.
rocks and held off for the Spaniards for a few days. But the conquistadors and the early Spanish settlers, like I said, they did find the bones.
Mm-hmm.
And they were later explained away as being mammoth bones or some other megafauna, whatever, giant sloths
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
some of them went back to, I remember reading an account, because I do a lot of research with primary sources. I want to read the diaries. I want to read, and because I can read Spanish,
Oh.
it's hard sometimes with the handwriting. But there was one Spanish settler that found a whole bunch of giant bones on his land
Mm-hmm.
and sent them to the Spanish king. He sent them back to Spain,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what happened with that. But yeah, there's stories, a lot of stories from the settlers about them uncovering bones. So
How do you say I love the Edge broadcast with Daniel Ott in Spanish?
me amo. A mí me gusta el programa del radio del Al Bordo, The Edge, broadcast con Daniel Ott.
See, man, I love it.
A mí me gusta el programa del radio del Edge, Daniel Ott. Yeah, that's what you
Okay,
say.
okay, now I'm gonna grab
And
that.
that literally translates to me, it is pleasing, the radio show of Daniel Ott. That's how you would say it.
Now I'm going to grab the audio and I'm going to put it in Google Translate. And we're going to find out exactly what you said. Hey, a question from Curious out of the live chat says, any new information on the Olmecs who preceded the Mayans?
They're making discoveries every day. They're expanding their knowledge on the Olmec, and the Olmec are considered the mother civilization of Mesoamerica. They were the first ones really to have art, the monumental architecture, the gigantic heads. People are familiar with the rounded heads, the big basalt, gigantic heads. And they were actually the first people to use the calendar, and then they had a rudimentary writing system. It was more like little tiny inscriptions, not very developed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's more and more information about that coming out.
Mm-hmm. Cryptids and legendary creatures. Give me an idea of what a cryptid and a legendary creature might be.
Well, we talked about a few of them, like the Bigfoot creature, the chupacabra. Another interesting one is they have their, if you can believe it, there's a counterpart in Mexico for everything.
Okay.
So there's even a Loch Ness monster, if you can believe that. There's a creature called the Awisut, and there was even an Aztec emperor. I think it was two before Montezuma, the one that Cortez encountered, with the Spanish first encountered. The two before him, I think, was called a Huizot. He called himself that because he wanted to be powerful like the creature. And it was a creature that lived in the Lake Texcoco. Mm-hmm. Mexico City, or Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, was built on an island in the middle of the lake. Lake Texcoco. So the Spanish came, destroyed everything, built their city, and then their city started to grow. So when the Spanish colonial city started to grow out, they had to drain Lake Texcoco. So when they drained the lake, there were no more lake monsters. That
Sad.
apparently was where the only place where the Owisat lived. And early Spanish, once again, the diaries, you go back to the primary sources, you have Spanish settlers writing about this lake creature that had this big tail that would reach out and take down your boat.
Wow.
And and people have been trying to figure out what the heck it was. And they're not saying that it was a dinosaur creature. They're thinking that it was some sort of gigantic mammal of some kind, that was some aquatic mammal. Mm-hmm. But once they drained the lake, that was it. The habitat was gone. So,
wow. I was at the True Legends Gen 6 conference about transhumanism in Branson, and while we were there, we met this couple that go down to Mexico, and I guess they evangelize there, but they said they saw, or a friend of theirs saw a giant around Copper Canyon. Is Copper Canyon, have you ever heard of that in Mexico?
Yeah, it's a famous place. It's bigger actually than the Grand Canyon in the United States. We think the Grand Canyon's the biggest canyon in the world or whatever, but Copper Canyon's actually bigger. And it's in an area of Mexico that's pretty remote. There's a train that goes up there for tourists and stuff, but it's a remote area. There have been sightings of other creatures up there. The Latrusa has been sighted in that area, wow. And then also the man bat. There's also been a flying witch that
wow.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny because someone took a picture of it. There were rumors about this witch flying around, and someone did take pictures, actually there's video footage. Really? And it's your typical Halloween witch flying on a broom. It's really weird. Yeah, I don't know whether it's doctored or not, but that whole Copper Canyon area is a mystical area unto itself, and it's there's a very intact indigenous community, the Tarahumaras, who live up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, they said there's some Indian groups up there that really haven't had any contact with the outside world.
Yeah, a lot of them don't even speak Spanish. That's one of the few areas where that's true.
Yeah,
most of Mexico is just a monoculture.
Yeah. So, when I hear that, I just think just leave them alone. Just let them live their lives and don't try to bring Western civilization to them. Don't hand them all a cell phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Just leave them the hell alone. That's the way I look at it. Well, there's another phenomenon called like a nymph. Now, I got what a picture here is probably not, but I don't know if it came from Mexico. I was trying to find it out, but basically this is a story of a nymph with her feet that point backwards. Have you heard of that?
Well, you know what? The Sisamite's feet point backwards. That's the Bigfoot. Yeah, that's an interesting creature.
Yeah.
Is that Mexican? I've never heard of that.
Well, it said South American, and that's what I said. I want to know if you ever heard. But
yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe it's in, like Peru or Colombia or something like that. Yeah, I haven't heard of that.
Does Mexico have nymphs, stories, creatures?
Well, it depends on what you mean by nymph, because we talked about the mermaid thing last time. Because they do have an enchanting mermaid that's in the lakes, not the coasts, not the oceans.
Yeah.
And there's also an alluring witch called the Tlahuelpuchi. I say that 10 times fast. Huh? Tlahuelpuchi, and it's a witch woman that sucks blood out of babies. What? And that's an interesting story because
not Catholic, right?
it only happens in the rural areas of a small state called Tlaxcala. Tlaxcala is in central Mexico, and it was its own special area for the longest time because the Spanish, when they were marching on their way to the Aztec capital, the Tlaxcalan people, that native group joined up with the Spanish and said, we're going to get those Aztecs, because the Aztecs were always fighting with the Tlaxcalans. So that that area was kind of left to its own devices. The indigenous people there were allowed to still keep their nobility, still keep their names. They were given special privileges, like they were able to own firearms, they were able to ride a horse, when other Indian groups throughout Mexico were not able to do that. So you had an indigenous culture kind of left alone in the middle of New Spain, in the middle of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of their traditions were still intact. Up until the 20th century, there were people, and I guess they still believe in this, how the Tlahuelpuchi came to the light of day for the rest of the world is there was a clerical worker in Tlaxcala City, the capital city of this small state of Tlaxcala, and he was looking at death records, and he was going through the death records, and cause of death for many of the infants he was seeing in the papers, this paperwork was chupado por la bruja. That was the cause of death, and that literally means sucked by a witch. That was the cause of death. So this just low-level clerical worker said to his boss, "What is this? What's going on?" And then the boss was like, "Oh, we've never noticed this before. So, hey, let's go to the rural areas and do an investigation." And this was in the 1950s. And so then they were, what's with all these infant deaths? And they were blaming it on this witch creature that supposedly, would turn into a witch in the middle of the night and go and enter your house, sometimes through a keyhole. It could shape shift, turn into a fly and fly through the keyhole, then, just appear in your baby's room or whatever. And there are all of these remedies to ward off the Tlahuelpuchi, including taking off your pants, turning one of your pant legs inside out, and then throwing your pants at the creature. That's supposed to get rid of it.
So I don't know which is worse, getting sucked by a witch or getting sucked by a priest. I don't know for a kid. Oh boy.
I thought this was a rated G podcast or a rated G.
No, it can happen. It can happen. But yeah, we got witches out there. How about this here? As I run away from what I just said, the palette, the hey man, at least I'm not making Hillary things with glasses. No, anyway, the palanquin. I'm not good with Mexican palanquin.
That's okay.
Astronaut. Palen.
Oh, palenque.
Palenque.
Yeah, perfect. You said it perfectly. Very
See?
good. Yeah, the Palenque astronaut. Now that has gotten a lot of attention, and that's thanks to Eric von Daniken, and then the reprieve of the whole thing. The reprieve, is that? Did I say the right word?
Yeah,
the resurrection
Reprise.
of the whole. There you go. I was combining a couple words.
I can speak American. I'm American.
The whole resurrection of the whole idea of ancient astronauts. Now they're called ancient aliens. Mm-hmm. So the Palenque astronaut is the idea comes from this lid of a sarcophagus found at Palenque in what they call the Temple of the Inscriptions, and it shows a man who is reclining in a chair, and his hands look like they're on controls. Uh-huh. His foot looks like it's on a pedal. Wow. It looks like he could possibly be in a space capsule. Now, I think this has been explained by mainstream archaeology, and this man on the sarcophagus, this astronaut, is Pakal the Great. He was the greatest ruler of the city of Palenque. He was responsible for a lot of the buildings and a lot of the public art, and he lived, I believe, into his 80s or 90s. He had a very long reign. He was installed as a teenage boy, I believe. Mm-hmm. So he had a really long reign, and he was responsible for bringing a lot of wealth and prosperity to the city-state, because the Maya were divided up into little kingdoms, little city-states. Mm-hmm. And so this elaborate sarcophagus archaeologists believe that it shows not his journey through space, but his journey to the afterlife. And the rocket exhaust in the back is really the tree of life. And he's in the reclining position because he is transitioning into another life, his next life. But everything's open to interpretation. We keep the mystery alive, right?
Robert, what's the matter with you? How do you know all this stuff?
I don't know. It's a blessing and a curse. No,
you're not reading the script, man. How do you know this stuff?
Well, it's I can't do this about China. I can't do this even about South America. It's just because I've been exposed to this stuff for so many years, and I've been interested in it, and it's been in my face from my travels. And so yeah, I just kind of made this little side thing from all of this, and things that interest you, you tend to remember. So
are you a Mexican, a dual citizen with Mexico?
No, I'm not even Mexican in heritage.
Can they let you do that?
Well, it's a long process. I guess if I bought property and went through the whole thing, you can also marry someone down there, but it's a lengthy process. It's pretty difficult to become a Mexican citizen. It has its benefits. I mean, as a U.S. citizen, you can't buy property that's near the coast or near the border. So if you wanted a condo on the beach, you couldn't do that as a U.S. citizen. You'd have to go through this complex legal thing, where you'd have to lease it. But yeah, I'm not a Mexican citizen, and you know what? That's not even my heritage. I'm just a gringo.
Have you seen those videos of Mexicans on top of trains heading north into the United States?
Yeah, well, a lot of them are Central Americans too. I mean,
Are they running from the chupacabra, trying to escape it?
I don't think so. No, but it's funny though that some people think that here we go into politics again, right? Some people think that we should open up the floodgates to them, and we owe them something. And a lot of those people have been brainwashed to believe that too, that somehow the United States has caused their poverty, and that's what's causing the need to flee. I don't know. It's a very complicated situation.
Well, one thing I've noticed by looking at your website and stuff, there's so many mysteries down there. It seems like they're alive and they're fresh. Whereas the United States, I mean, all we got here in the United States, well, I got a Bigfoot, might have a Mothman, but you go to Mexico, man, you got all kinds of stuff down there. Why is that?
I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there have been complex civilizations, high civilizations, not to take away anything from the Iroquois or the Pueblo peoples of the Southwest or anything like that. But there have been really complex civilizations in Mexico that had a writing system, indoor plumbing, high civilizations for thousands and thousands of years. And those civilizations many of them were intact when the Europeans came. Were living, breathing civilizations. So they come with all of this history, all of this lore, and that's what makes the country, I think, so rich with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I liked your take on that last time because I asked you about a wall or just a meld. Why don't we just meld Mexico with the United States? But I think your answer was they're rich in culture and this and that, and they need to be them, not us. And
right, and build a bridge, not a wall, like we talked about. How are we going to do that, and why would you want to? And that's not being racist. I'm not saying, I don't want any Mexicans in the United States, whatever. I don't want McDonald's to be in the Central Plaza in Mexico City. I don't want Coca-Cola to be everywhere either. I mean, I don't want our Americanism or globalism, whatever you want to call it. I want that to stay out of Mexico.
Yeah.
So, and maybe some people might consider that to be exclusionary or narrow-minded thinking or whatever. But that's my opinion. Yeah. If you think that we should all be one and have a one world government, one world culture, fine. You
Mm-hmm.
can think that if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But those same people, it's interesting, those same people who say build a bridge, not a wall, say respect diversity.
Right.
Now, to respect diversity means that we don't want a monoculture for the whole world. We don't want McDonald's everywhere, and we don't want this whole build a bridge, not a wall,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to blend cultures that aren't compatible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. I don't get
Mm-hmm.
the whole unity and one world, we're all the same, and then we need to respect diversity. It's one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. I would say too that maybe the Muslims need to stay in their blown up cities over there and enjoy their culture a lot better, surrounded by a bunch of blown up buildings. I mean,
well,
you come
why
over here.
would why would you want to go there?
Yeah.
And why would and then turn that around? Why would they want to go to a country where maybe they're not as
Right.
welcome or as they fit in
Why
as
would they
well?
want to go to a country that has bacon donuts? I mean, they and there is such a thing. So
And you know
yeah,
what?
why
There's
would you
no
go there?
way. I had a discussion with a Somalian guy once, and he was saying to me, I will die before I eat any pork. And I said, you know what? You've already eaten pork without even knowing it.
Oh,
You've had a gummy bear. There's pork hoofs in gummy bears or whatever.
hmm.
There's, there,
Did not know.
there's stuff everywhere. You can't,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And so, in order to avoid that sort of thing, well, then you move to a country that can accommodate you.
Yeah,
But here, it's not going to happen.
yeah. We tried to get Obama to move, but he wouldn't do it. So yeah. All right. So then we got otherworldly phenomena.
Yeah, that's all the
What?
UFO activity and stuff. And we
And
talked
that's
a
it.
little bit about that before.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned that because it seems like they're much more open with their UFO activities. And hey, did you see the video? I know you're kind of been out of touch. Did you see that video in China of some kind of gigantic plume of white smoke in the middle of the night was making loops or something? Now, was that a rocket or was that a UFO? That's what I want to know.
Photoshop? I don't know. I mean,
Or
we don't know the source of a lot of this stuff. I saw that and I thought, oh, what is this?
Mhm.
It could be a number of things.
yeah,
But back to what you were saying, people are more open to the whole UFO thing.
hmm
I briefly mentioned this on the last show that Mexico is the first country that I know of to actually, the government actually asked for cooperation to get to the bottom of the UFO mystery. And they went to a paranormal researcher who was popular on television down there to do it.
hmm
And that was, I think, the first time in history that that sort of collaboration happened. We have all this excitement about the Pentagon and that guy from Blink 182. What's Tom DeLonge? He lives here in San Diego.
Really?
I know someone who knows him actually. But
Wait a minute. Are you in San Diego?
yeah, I'm in the belly of the beast. I'm in
Okay,
California.
I listen to a radio program called Michael Savage, and I think he's in San Diego too. And I think it might be the third largest broadcaster. I think it's Limbaugh, and then Hannity, and then I think it's Michael Savage, maybe um, um, Laura Ingraham, then Michael. But anyway, he says he lives there. He says that there are piles of poop everywhere down in the city. Is that true?
It's getting worse and worse. The homeless situation is terrible here, and it's a lot of it has to do with the weather. The weather is the best in the United States, hands down.
Mhm.
Like I said, it's 72 degrees almost every day, 74 degrees. It's not a humid, we're on the coast,
Mhm.
but it's a desert. And that's an issue that I have with this governor that we have. Oh, we're in a drought. Oh, it's so terrible. I can look out the window here. There's a vacant lot next to my warehouse that has prickly pear cactus growing in it. Well, I'm from New Mexico. You know what prickly pear cactus and yucca, you know what that means?
Nope.
It means you're living in a desert. This is a desert.
Wow.
There's no drought. I
Okay.
mean, it's a desert because of the way that it's set up, and a lot of things go into that. But
Mhm.
this isn't like Florida. It's not hot and humid. It's in the mid 70s usually throughout the year, and it's pretty dry. We had a rainstorm last night. I think that was the first time it rained in like 3 or 4 months.
Mm.
But Yeah, it's the weather is so nice here that it attracts a lot of homeless people.
Hmm.
And then you have politicians who don't want to do anything about the homeless situation because a lot of them don't live in neighborhoods that
Hmm.
are even near where homeless people are.
Right,
My
right.
neighborhood, I live between, for those people who know San Diego, I live between, roughly between the San Diego Zoo and SeaWorld. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'm in kind of central San Diego.
Hmm.
Homeless people everywhere. I mean, there's not a day that goes by where I don't get hit up for money or whatever if I go to a store or
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's pretty bad here with
Do,
that. And the politicians, like I said, won't do anything about it. The
have,
homeless people have a right to have shopping carts. They have a right to this and a right
mhm,
to that. And it's like, no, get away from me.
mhm.
You know, these politicians, like I said, they don't even live in the areas. They're in their
Is
gated
there
communities.
used hypodermic needles on the sidewalks?
I've seen that, yeah. Oh yeah,
Wow. Man, I always
sure.
thought, yeah,
I've seen that, and I've seen the poop, and it's awful. It's horrible.
liberalism, man. It's a mental disorder. It really is. It sounds to me like you'd be better off getting some chupacabras up there, take the trash out. But I mean, or the
Yeah,
whatever that
there's no.
sucky
I
thing
I
is.
don't know what the solution is. It gets worse and worse. I mean, I've actually thought of leaving. I always think about leaving this place. I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
can take my business and operate it anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
a small town in West Virginia, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm all internet based. So I don't know. I mean, I love the weather here. The beaches are wonderful. The weather's great. I that's about it. I'm sorry. Anyway,
All right. Well, no apologies necessary there. Um, what else we got here? Part 7, unclassified. What's going on with that?
well, and unclassified. That's a part of my book and a part of my podcast where I put things where if it doesn't fit into the other categories, that's all.
And I think we
Like
hit a lot of categories too.
yeah, well, the categories I have usually are religious curiosities, there's otherworldly phenomenon, there's the cryptids, legendary creatures, there's also myths and legends, and then there's ancient mysteries. And then anything that doesn't fit in there, then that's what I put into the
Kind of a
unclassified.
catch-all creep show.
I guess so, yeah.
But
Like I put, like I did a show, for example, on the Mexican peso, the untold story of the Mexican peso. It
mhm.
was once most people don't know this, but it was once the prized currency in the world. It was being
Really,
used in China, Australia, all over the place, and then it just kind of fell by the wayside in the late 1800s. But it was used as currency in the United States. Like 1/4 of all the coins
hmm
in the United States before the Civil War were Mexican coins.
hmm
So, and we still have, the Mexican peso, the the pillar dollar they used to call it, was divided into 8 pieces. So an eighth of a dollar is 12.5 cents. That eighth was called a bit. 2 bits, we still say for 25 cents. Do you have 2 bits? Not so much anymore, but I remember when I was a kid,
hmm
we would say, a quarter was 2 bits, and that comes from
hmm
back when the peso was king. So that's an example of my unclassified.
hmm
Sometimes I'll go off into a topic that people don't really know anything about, and then talk about it. And I'll dump it in
um,
there.
the Day of the Dead, isn't that sort of a merging of people's traditions in Catholicism, like All Saints Day and that kind of thing, and they're kind of emerging. And it seems that the Catholics had a big effect on Mexico. Um, and so, is it possible? And have you come to any conclusion that some of these myths are just generated by the Catholic Church to try to control people with scary monsters?
Well, there was a lot of control in the early days. Yeah, they had to get control over this population somehow because they were outnumbered like 200 to 1 or something.
Hmm.
So a lot of what they did was a primitive form of propaganda and mind control
Hmm.
over the people. Because some people believe that some of these early apparitions of Mary or of Jesus or whatever were not really, they didn't really happen, that they weren't real,
Mm-hmm.
that they were just created to try to control the people.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these stories were kind of, they kind of backpedaled and said, look, this is what your people used to believe before we came. You know, like we talked about before, the whole Quetzalcoatl or Quetzalcoatl, the bearded white man. That wasn't in pre-Hispanic times. There was no bearded white man. It was the feathered serpent god. Then it became the bearded serpent. Then it became a bearded white god, and that was probably used to manipulate the natives into thinking that the Spanish rule was legitimate and was prophesied by the their
Yeah.
ancestors.
Well, see, I'm convinced there are cryptids out there and there are mysteries out there, and it just seems to me that some of that, what is really true, or at least still a mystery, is being convoluted by those kinds of efforts through history, where they try to, you know, get people in and give them various feed off their own fears and create things they don't. And then the rest of the cryptids, man, you don't know whether they're real or not. But definitely, there's definitely some mysteries out there, Robert. And I appreciate your in-depth study on there. Like I say, I'm just amazed by your knowledge. Has the Mexican government ever called you up and say, "Hey, we want you to speak to a Mexican crowd because you know so much about our own country"?
Well, no, I haven't gotten that, but I have gotten from individual Mexicans who contact me and say, "Wow, you know, you're educating me. You know, I haven't heard about all this stuff."
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it takes people with an interest and the desire to learn more, you know, to uncover this sort of stuff. And I'm that kind of a person. You know, I just want to learn more and more. And like I said, I do this every Sunday. I do a show. I do it once a week. I can do more shows per week. If you know, if I had the time, I could do a show a day. There's endless material.
Well, see, as an American, I know when July 4th is. So you know, I'm pretty hip on our country's culture. Okay,
Good.
that's ridiculous. I mean, but
So am
really, as an
I.
American, that's about all we know anymore, man. I don't even know. Robert Biddle, I appreciate you coming on the Edge Television broadcast. Now, tell people where they can listen to your podcast and where they can buy this book right here.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you and I want to thank the listeners. The last show I was on, I got some great feedback from people, and a lot of people subscribed to me because of that. So, first, I want to say thank you for that. And so, where to find me? MexicoUnexplained.com. That's the place where you can find pretty much everything. And if you can't find it there, you'll have links to other things, like to my book on Amazon, or to the YouTube channel. I believe there's a link on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can contact me through there or through YouTube also. I'm really good at responding to comments there. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Robert Biddle, it's been a lot of fun. Appreciate you coming on the
Yeah.
show. Can we have you on again sometime?
Anytime, anytime. I love talking to you. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, stay safe and thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.